No, not to. No, that's. Oh, Lord. Let me know if you can hear me on here. Ooh. Can you hear me? All right, we got a couple people on here. I've got an exciting class to teach today since the sun just moved into Virgo. And Virgo is one of my favorite, not necessarily favorite signs, but favorite time of the year. Oh, you can hear me. Thank you. Oh, good. That makes me feel better. Also, if it starts getting crackly or weird or anything like that, let me know, because sometimes I think my mic might not be plugged in all the time, and sometimes it gets weird. All right, so Virgo season is a transition time. And basically what that means is that during Virgo season, we're going from summer into fall. So all this studio equipment right here. I'll just move that around a little bit. So we're going into fall, but not yet. Virgo season is its whole own thing. The autumnal equinox is going to be, I think that's like the 22nd of September or somewhere during that last week in September. So Virgo season, we start to prepare. We start doing, checking all the dots and crossing all the T's, making sure that we have set ourselves in order. So Virgo also represents the intestines. Virgo is that part of the body that is related with digestion as, yes, some of the mechanical parts of digestion, but what I'm seeing more specifically is when you eat food, it sets off all these chemical reactions that take place in the body. And your body has, I think of it like when things get sent into the FedEx or the post office, that everything has to be sorted. So it's like, okay, this is a lipid, this is a fructose, and then it's like, where do we send these things throughout the body? So that is like Virgo in some ways. So I wanted to start off by looking at, see if we can get a nice-ish wheel here. One of the classes that we went through last week talked about the 4 directions as the 4 cardinal signs. And we're just going to I'm going to give you a little model of that. So I'm going to put North, Capricorn, and we're going to have East as Aries, South. I don't even think you guys can put South up here. South as the cardinal sign of Cancer. And then the West as the cardinal sign of Libra. So right before we get to Libra, we have Virgo. And the way these are always going to work, they're always going to work in polarity. So Virgo is part of the axis with Pisces, which also happens to be right before we get to the cardinal sign of Aries. So you can see, this maybe doesn't look that good, but you can see how, I'm going to make this look a little bit better because it is Virgo season. So Pisces is going right through and coming straight over to meet its other end, which is Virgo. So right after Virgo season, we'll get into Libra. And what I want to focus on today is the mechanics of Virgo, what phase of the solar year we are in Virgo season, what parts of our body, and really give you a nice idea of like a focal point for this season. And the reason for me is because Virgo season is a critical point before we get ready to go into the winter. So there's a lot of really important things. I also want to talk about the planetary co-respondences that Virgo has in our current astrological science. A lot of people think of Mercury as, this is the people who say rulership. So that group of people that you'll hear astrology from think in terms of rulership, and Virgo being ruled by Mercury. And Mercury, they say, has a co-rulership ruling over Virgo as well as Gemini. So briefly on that tip, I will tell you about how that works. So Mercury is the sign of the mind. It has to do with quicksilver, quick thinking, being able to see lots of, like, all the options and being able to dip in and out of matter and spirit, meaning that you're able to see the vision, bring it down to earth, go between all the realms. And it's just like your thoughts. Your thoughts are able to go from complete mythical creatures, your imagination, your dreams, and then bring it all the way back down to, I need to go fill up my water jugs at the water store. So Mercury is like that. Gemini, I see this whole rulership thing doesn't really sit right for me in at all. I see co-respondences and relationships correlating, co-relating. So the things that are similar between Virgo, Gemini, and Pisces is that they're all mutable signs. So they're all in part dissolution. They're dissolving some sort of, with Virgo, it's patterns. With Pisces, it has to do with the whole vision, the whole dream. And with Gemini, it has to do with the zeros and ones, the perspective of information itself. So these three mutable signs dissolve, and they're all here to sort of, I think of it like throwing a coin in the wheel. So the cardinal signs start the wheel moving, and the topics will be these four different things. So cardinal signs, Capricorn starts the wheel of what is culture and how do we build the foundation for culture. For Aries, the cardinal sign that gets something going, the initiation into what do we need to protect what's young and growing. And then the cardinal sign of Cancer gets things going in conception, dropping a seed into the water and having it grow and be nurtured, nourished. So it initiates uh, babies and gardens and initiates how we're going to nourish the seeds. Then when we get to the cardinal sign of Libra, the wheel that it gets going is conscious co-creative relationships within a community, within households, within marriage. So it initiates how we do relationship. And then the next from we just went through cardinal. Then I went really in depth on this last week, so I'm just going to recap quickly. We have, after this, we have the sustaining signs. So we have sustaining. The other word that most people use for that is self-interest. So we have creation, stasis, dissolution. I'm on stasis, and that is fixed. So in Google astrology, you'll call this the fixed signs. Fixed sign, we'll have over here Taurus, which is the fixed signs give us a comfort moment. So we're talking about this wheel spinning. The cardinal signs get the wheel spinning during the fixed signs or the self-interested signs that I call stasis or maintenance. This is where we get comfortable. The initiation has started. Now we have a moment to get into ourselves and be comfortable. So for Taurus, that is around being grounded. I'll just leave it at that. Being grounded, having money, being comfortable and beautiful, luxurious. And then after Cancer, we have the fixed sign of Leo, which now that we've had the seed be planted and nourished, now it's really exploring all of what it means to be this creative spark of divinity. So Leo is that place where we really feel our worth. And I always will say royalty with Leo because there is this royal a royalty that comes with Leo. Then after we get the wheel going in Libra of setting up how we're doing relationships, getting comfortable in our relationship, we get into Scorpio season, which is the stasis fixed phase of now that we've gotten into this relationship. It's that being in intimacy, being in a sexual embrace, whether that means actual sexuality like intercourse or just a sexual embrace of the polarity of what we've created in Libra season. And everything that goes with that, the ownership, the mine, let's indulge in that Scorpio energy, that Scorpio season. And then from once Capricorn got structure and got culture initiated, the next fixed sign over here would be Aquarius. So that's where we're going to maintain the moment of the culture and being able to, like, now that we've got that set, now I'm going to go up into cosmic consciousness and innovate. And it's a lingering feeling of how weird can I get? How far out can I go? All right. So from Aries, we have the spark. Aries is fire in the form of the spark. It's the beginning, how we go out into the world as an individual. I don't want to go through all of these again. Taurus, I already mentioned that. Gemini, I talked about that too. So Gemini is where we're gonna, like the plants that come off with two little antennas, you could call it, when a plant grows, that it bifurcates. It's where you split off into two, and has to do with picking up as much information as possible, which is what those plants are doing with those two little first leaves when they sprout. They're collecting all as much information as they can from the environment around them. So that's like Gemini. Oh my gosh, I just want to go to Virgo. I know I said I would go through all of these. Can I do it? Yeah. I already did though. So, okay, so Gemini, and then we get into Cancer season, and I talked about that. We get to Leo season. From Leo, it's like the hottest time of the year for us, where we are just completely went out into, wow. Once the seed is, the conception happens in Cancer season. The seed is nourished. In Leo season, it gets cooked. It's as hot as it possibly can get. And there's a lot of activity, a lot of action happening. When we get to Virgo season, all of that heat that goes out. Leo is fire in the form of the huge flame. Then we get to Virgo season, and I felt it strong this year. Like the moment the sun went into Virgo, I felt this like, all right, let's bring all of that down. Everything that we gathered and did all of that connecty hot energy in Leo, that we gather it and bring it down into using our hands, making it work, making it into something. So Virgo wants to have all of that has been gathered make sense and put it into a function. A lot of times what we hear about Virgo is that they are perfectionist, and that this is like a perfectionist time of year. I don't see it as a perfectionist as much as it is like, I know that there's a lot that needs to be done right now. So we're going to make lists in Virgo season. We're going to really make sure, like if we were living on the land, Virgo season would be the time that we really are working with the plants, doing the last bits of harvesting, preparing for autumn. So if we're not working on the land, we're still doing that. There's still a drive within ourselves because of the sun and moon, and the places that the sun and moon are at this time of year. Where we're at in this time of year drives our soul, which, if you don't know, psychology comes from psyche, which is the soul. Ology, study of the psyche, which is the soul. And modern day psychologists, for the most part, don't use the word soul because it's too woo-woo or whatever. But if you know etymology, psychology comes from studying the soul. So at this time of year, it's in our soul, it's in our cells, in our DNA, to start preparing for autumn. What does that look like for you? For me, I feel an instant like my head goes like this, and I just want to write the lists, write the schedules, make the plans, and then get to work checking those things off. Another thing I want to tell you about Virgo, because of that whole topic of planetary co-respondences, and I have never thought, I don't see the co-respondence with Virgo and Mercury. So on a Google search, you will see Mercury as the planetary ruler of Virgo. Most, like 99% of your Google searches will say that. It doesn't make sense to me because Mercury is more up here in the air realms. Virgo is an earth sign, and it has a practical function. Not saying that the mental activity of Mercury doesn't have a practical function, but it is more ethereal. It is more, it's the messenger. Mercury is the messenger. That sign that Nike has, the little swoosh, like, because Nike running in between the different levels of dimensions, you could say, going up into the heavens, communicating with the gods, going to the underworld, communicating with the gods of the underworld, and moving messages in through the middle world where we live. Saturn, then, instead of Mercury. Thank you for saying that. So Saturn definitely is Capricorn. And the subtle differences, I'm so glad. Thank you for engaging with me, because sometimes I feel like I'm in here talking to myself. And I will give you a planetary correspondence that's going to blow your mind about Mercury. But because you mentioned Saturn, it's definitely related to contraction, building the structure. There's heaviness and discipline, being the boss. And Saturn also has a connection with time, which is why the deities that I associate with Saturn are the goddess Kali. Oh, just slipped my mind. Saturn. I had another goddess. Kali's the only one that's standing in my mind right now. So let me think. How could we say that Saturn, just for the sake of exploration, Saturn is Earth. It's the heaviest metal. I was going to say iron. I think Saturn does have to do with iron. And it's also connected to our bones. So is it iron in our bones? Iron would be the blood. Okay, yes. And Saturn also relates with our ancestors. So it does also deal with blood. And then how could it be related to Virgo? What are you doing? Go down. She's trying to eat my smoothie. It's my dog, Isis. All right, so yeah, I'm not readily seeing anything that I could, besides it's an earth sign. Let me just get to it. So Virgo relates with, in my mind, and what I have listed in the Cosmic Alchemy certification course, when we get to Virgo season, I talk about Vesta. The reason I talk about Vesta here is because of the connection with the priestess. And even Vesta isn't exactly the best. So far what I've come up with is these are asteroids. They're part of the asteroid belt. Chiron, Vesta. And then when you really want to get into it, I feel like Virgo, the planetary correspondence, is the whole asteroid belt. Asteroid belt. Oh, Lord. The entire asteroid belt. And the reason is because that asteroid belt was at one time its whole own celestial body. And there's a lot of myth, a lot of story around this asteroid belt as being a feminine planet. And so when this asteroid belt broke into, I don't know, I want to say thousands, maybe millions, I'll say thousands of little asteroids in that. No, probably more than thousands. There's a lot of asteroids in the asteroid belt. Like if you pull up an asteroid chart for yourself, there's an asteroid for every name you can think of. There's so many asteroids. This asteroid belt has 4 main asteroids, which have to do with the goddesses. So since this asteroid was known as a feminine planet, Virgo has a huge feminine component that has to do with the temple priestesses. The temple priestesses. Let me just talk about that for a second, and then maybe we'll get into a little bit of this asteroid belt connection. So the temple priestesses, we have the plant medicine, first of all. In the temple, There was a priestess in charge of gathering plants and making medicine. There was a priestess in charge of the sacred timings, knowing when was the equinox and the solstice, knowing when, excuse me, knowing when to do different ceremonies and rituals to connect the community with the planets, with the gods. There was a priestess that was in charge of relationships. So somebody would have to teach you how, because gosh, why don't we have these things anymore? Like, so far, these two priestesses I've mentioned, we don't have that. We have doctors. We do have some herbalists now, and it's getting more, we're getting more back into this connection to the priestesses. Okay, so I was over here on the relationship. Somebody to teach us how to do things as far as like learning sexuality. With another body to create this third thing, whether that's a child or if that's creating abundance for the next, like, manifestation with our orgasmic energy. That's a whole thing that we just don't even know about because we burned the temples and because the priestesses were disemboweled or taken down and replaced with one priest who is the mediator between all of us and the gods. So we mentioned that there's one more. So these the asteroid goddesses. We have Ceres, which is the goddess of grain. That is how we learn how to harvest and make food and plant food, harvest the food, use the food, cook the food. Like, we need that. There's a priestess for that. Then we have Ceres. We have Pallas Athena, which is the goddess of innovation. It's the air realm, communication, being in search for higher intelligence. That's a feminine quality of inquisitive, asking questions, being like, well, if this is this, then what is that? Making all of those mental connections. And then Pallas Athena, then we have Juno, which has to do with the relationships. Juno would be the goddess of conscious co-creative partnerships. There's a lot of connection with Libra there. With Pallas Athena, there's a lot of connection with Aquarius. And then we mentioned Ceres. With Ceres, there's a lot of connection with Saturn, being in charge of the harvest. Does it grow corn? How do we plant agriculture? That's a Capricorn connection. And then the fourth asteroid goddess is Vesta. Just kind of seeing a connection with these cardinal signs with those four asteroid goddesses too. I got to look at that a little bit more. But Vesta I usually relate Vesta with Virgo, but I'm just having this other thought at the moment and seeing how, let's see, if we had Ceres, Juno, Cancer would be some water element. So these two, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. Aries, maybe there's not a direct correlation there. But so Vesta is the sacred hearth. It has to do with the fire that's lit in the temple. The fire that reflects the light of the moon. So it's a different kind of light. So Vesta is usually known as the temple priestess that's in charge of, hold on a second. Our sacred work and what it is, if you're looking at Vesta on your chart, it's going to show you about what lights you up. What is your sacred work? Vesta has a connection with being in service to spirit through doing your sacred work. That's the connection I keep making back with Virgo, that it is something that we are committed to. We are assigned a certain set of, we get certain skills that are to be used in service to the whole. All right, so let me just briefly also talk about Chiron, because Chiron also, sometimes you'll see Chiron related with Virgo. And the connection with Chiron is that it has to do with healing. There is a healing component with Virgo, because remember, Virgo is part of this whole axis with Virgo and Pisces. So the healing component of Virgo has to do with, over here, Pisces has this whole heart behind the universal heart, infinite love, universal love and compassion, and connection to the mystical aspect of medicine. It's like a spirit and soul level of healing with Pisces. Then as we take that back down to Earth, to Virgo, we find a way to use our hands to translate this universal love and make it into medicine. To make medicine, we have to use our hands. We have to, like, the way I experience making medicine is that something will be dropped in. I'll see an arrangement of plants, and then I have to put myself in the kitchen with the plants and be guided and putting them together. And there's all these different little processes that have to happen. Virgo, tiny little processes that happen. And then, you can't make medicine just by thinking about it, although some healing artists would say that you can, just through, you don't need to use your hands, that you could do, you can do some healing work, like by questioning your beliefs. This book is coming in my mind about the theta healing. Theta healing is a really powerful way of going into your programs of your beliefs and bringing them out, showing them, questioning them, and that you're able to actually remove limiting beliefs. And so here I am just disproving my previous statement, which is that you have to use your hands to make medicine. So this is probably an area where, from this Pisces spirit, soul, it's imaginations and dreams, and this, like, you could call, imagination gets a bad name because it's not, oh, hi. Oh, yes, the whiteboard. You'll be back to your whiteboard soon. And that there is a level of healing that we're able to do just here, just with Pisces and this and the thought forms and there is a level of having to bring that down into your kitchen, working your hands, or bringing that down to the earth, we'll say, with Virgo, because to do anything from spirit level, you do have to do something to make it real. Because you know what I'm seeing also, like, even if you do this, like, theta healing is just the example. It's not the only thing that you can do healing wise. that will make a definite difference in your life. There's other things too that you're working with. Reiki, for instance, you're channeling energy with your hands, but sometimes, I mean, in a traditional Reiki class, not in my classes, I do teach hands-on things in Reiki also. But in Reiki, you're not touching, and it changes the energy in the body. But then when the person goes home, there are practical steps that they need to take to keep that. You know, like if you go to a chiropractic adjustment and they do something to you with their hands and they crack you up, it's called, does it keep? Well, it probably won't keep if you go back into your life and keep doing things that you were doing that got your body twisted in the first place. So there is going to be always a level of needing to do this Virgo hands-on work to make sure that that you're able to manifest, to make real. So from this whole axis, from Pisces, we see the big vision, we had the dream, we have the dreams. Also, Pisces is creator's dream of you. So when creator was having a dream, what was that dream? What was creator's dream for you? And then on this other end, we get to Virgo, where it is constructed into a 3D, made into an earth form. All right, so I was just talking about the healing, and then let's look at Chiron just a little bit. Chiron, I don't see it having any planetary co-respondence with any one particular sign. The reason is Chiron is like all the little spaces between everything. Chiron is a universal healing thread, universal healing thread that holds all of this together and that holds all of you together. So Chiron has, wow. So as I'm seeing that, Chiron being it's one thread that holds it all together. It's like the master weaver that's weaving all these little spaces between the signs, and within you, all those little spaces between Venus and Mars within you and how that relates with your moon. Chiron is weaving. Chiron is that thread that weaves all of those things together. And where Chiron is on your chart, it shows you how you become that thread. And when you fully become that thread, you're able to make this beautiful mandala, seamlessly weaving all of your parts together. And so what I'm seeing is that asteroid belt. Because when that asteroid, and there's a lot of different myths about what that was, but it was a celestial body, if we would call it a planet, or if we would call it, yes, I've seen planet. Planet just means wanderer, and that's what all these bodies are, definitely wandering through the sky. So and I think there is a name for what the asteroid belt was before it blew up and went everywhere all at once. As that asteroid belt, okay, here we are. Here's the planet that it used to be, and we're going to call it a feminine planet because that's the mythology that's stuck in my head, is that there was this other planet. When you look at the sky and the planets, we only have Venus and Moon. Venus and Moon. Everything else has a very masculine name and a masculine connotation with it. And even people will say he when they talk about Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, they're all he's. And then the only she that you will ever hear is Venus and Moon. It's weird. It's definitely weird. It's reminding me of the Smurfs and how Smurfette was the only she among all the male Smurfs. So I guess what I'm saying is that this planet was a feminine planet. It would have been another she. And at some point in history, by now, I don't remember the exact point in our human recollection of time that this blew up and became the asteroid belt, but there was some point in history that this became the asteroid belt. Now we have tons of different asteroids, and the four main ones we call the goddess asteroids. And Chiron is there also, like piecing together all of these disparate parts of ourselves. So within that, so okay, Virgo is like Chiron in that sense of wanting to put together vast amounts of information back into something that makes us whole. There is a service involved with that. It's not because you don't ever try to put together a whole bunch of stuff just for yourself. I mean, even if you're doing a puzzle or building a Lego set, you are putting together a bunch of parts, but it's not just for yourself. You know, there's an art, at least if nothing else, there's an art involved with it that you're going to share that. So, what I'm doing right now is making a connection between Chiron, Vesta, and then ultimately this whole asteroid belt as a planetary, if you want to say a planetary ruler, what I would say is a planetary co-respondence with Virgo. It would be something more like this than it would be Mercury. Because Mercury, I really just don't see the connection with Mercury and Virgo. Virgo to me has this more grounded, let's make it real, and there's all these, like, I wake up in the morning and I do all these things. It's Virgo is related to your sixth house, which has to do with health and wellness and the routines, the micro details that you do every single day to take care of your health and wellness. And hopefully you do have something like that, but don't feel guilty if you don't, because at this time in our culture, a lot of people really don't have a designated health and wellness routine built into their life because we blew up the priestess temples and replaced it with a one priest that just we really haven't we really don't have that whole those whole goddess asteroid temple priestesses within our own psyche, within our own psychology, soulology. We don't really have that anymore because during that point in history, when all those goddess temples were destroyed and replaced by a masculine god, we also lost that in our own psychology. Okay. Chiron, you're bringing forth a unique experience to share with the collective. Chiron, you're bringing forth your unique. Okay, yeah. So I just had this amazing vision while I was sitting over here talking and looking about Chiron as a thread between all these little parts, and that it is the part of us that is the master weaver that weaves Venus to Mars to Moon to Sun to your ascendant. So Chiron is like what weaves all of that together. And then where Chiron is on your chart, this is what it's like, the fragment. You could call it a missing piece, but it's not missing. It's actually there because you can see it on your chart. Chiron in the whatever house, in whatever sign, making whatever planetary aspects that it's making. Okay, so this is our clue to how we become, not become, it's realize, how we realize what our chirotic thread looks like, what it feels like, and where we feel separate, because that thread has a knot in it. And that's where Chiron is on your chart. There's a knot in the thread, and that knot messes up every other little space where it would be making connections between all of these parts of yourself. There's a knot. You can see what house that knot is in. And I'm just going to say 6 because that's what's showing up in my mind. There's a knot in the 6th house, and it's in the sign of Libra. And so you know that for you to really work your Chiron, you've got to untie that knot. For you to untie your knot, you got to learn all these different techniques. There's all these different experiences you go through. Asteroid belt is a multitude of experiences. So going through all these different experiences, having to learn a lot of different things so that you can untie that knot. And then the sign is going to be the way in which you go about untying the knot. So I said Libra. So it's through conscious co-creative relationships that you're able to, or you're untying that knot in the 6th house of your physical body, daily routines, and doing it in ways that asks for help from your relationships and from the community and people around you. So it's going to be messy in that area. It can hurt. It can feel really like you don't want to do it because you feel guilty and ashamed of yourself in those areas. And as you step out and do more of it, reaching out and being uncomfortable and being vulnerable, that eventually the knot is untied. And that might be at your Chiron return when you're about 50 years old, between 48 and 52, somewhere in there, that you finally are able to untie that knot. And then all of the, once that knot's untied, all these other spaces just, that's it. It was like the missing piece. It's where the fragments come to be alchemized, definitely. So that whole thing about alchemy, I call Chiron the alchemist because it is where so all these little spaces between things, that's like your big pot. And once you've untied that one knot, everything in the pot is now able to do whatever it needs to do. And now you can make the medicine. And the pot is really your body. It really is your soul. And you become the medicine. So now this thing that used to be really hard and challenging, you're actually an expert at that. Through going through all those experiences, troubles, trials, and what do we say? Trial and error. And then eventually you have mastered the alchemy of making the particular medicine that you are. So, how does this all relate with Virgo? Virgo is, if you think about your intestines and the digestive system of like, there's all this information that you've put in by way of food and drink and thoughts and ideas. That's all part of digestion. Anxieties, things that you hear, like the certain types of music that are playing while you're eating is part of digestion. It's all information that's coming in. And the Virgo part of you in the intestines is going to like look at it all. I think this is why the association with anxiety, like I actually call it anxiety belly, where there's so much information in there that it's like, oh, do with all this, and there's a certain amount of time that you're working with. So again, to marshmallow, that I could see that connection with Saturn. You had mentioned earlier, would Virgo have a connection with Saturn? And so that element of time with Virgo, I can see that because there is a timing involved. Like when you, and this is just the most gross manifest physical form of it. When you eat food, there is a certain time that you have for each of these things to take place. Like if the stomach doesn't move food into the small intestine in a certain amount of time, it does begin to ferment if it's fruits. and you've put some meat or some heavier thing, it starts to ferment and create gas. So there is this level of like, we need to get this done. And that's a Virgo thing of like, okay, we've got all of this. We need to get it done, push it along, send it here, package this up, send it over there, bring in I see this also like a stagehand who's like, bring in the cleaners. And then so the cleaners come in. All right, we need this guy, bring this. And there's a service that's like behind the scenes that's ushering things along in your soul, in your psychology, in your physical body. It actually, for everything, for a wound, when you get a wound, there's like the Virgo part of your body is like, usher in white blood cells. All right, bring up this and bring the serum and do this. And there's like the behind the scenes part. Ultimately, Virgo wants to pull all of this together and make it work. So I feel that there's this undying commitment to the pattern. There's discernment. There's this knowing that something has dispersed. The asteroid belt has dispersed and gone everywhere. And Virgo wants to keep pulling that all together to make meaning, to make sense, to make things make sense. Virgo is in love with the pattern. So where Virgo is on your chart, you'll want to look at the house. Oh, let's do this. I hope I feel free to ask any questions because I'm not sure if I made this whole connection clear where I was saying that Virgo's planetary ruler may not be Chiron or Vesta. It may be this whole asteroid. Before it became the asteroid belt, it was a celestial body. We can call it a planet. That Virgo's connection is that. And if you can think for a minute in a mystical sense, that there's a part of you that wants to pull things together and have the pattern and have things make sense and be in service to spirit through ushering along every little small detail that you need to make your body go healthily through life. There's a part of you that wants that. And from whatever this feminine, we could even say feminine, not female, feminine planet was, that now that's dispersed into a whole belt of experiences and situations that we're going to go through in life, that this Virgo part of you is eternally wanting to connect all the dots and bring it into a pattern of wholeness. So within that, you can hear a sense of Chiron, you can hear a sense of Vesta, and this whole asteroid belt really makes sense because Virgo wants to make digestion go easily and to utilize all of the bits and pieces of information that we have to be in service to spirit. So I don't see Mercury as a planetary correspondence at all, except for the piece of information. But with Virgo, the information is a tool to put it together, to make it make sense to the pattern, to be of service to spirit. Okay, let's do this part now. Let's look at your chart. Virgo season is always like, it hits me. I feel it so hard, and I know why. And it's a major. It's where my North Node is, where my Saturn is. It's in opposition to Pisces, which is where I have like everything in Pisces. So when Virgo season comes, I am like my notes and my journal and all the things, like 5 dreams a night, and it's just like my head goes down and I'm like, all right, let's do this. We got to do this. How are all these pieces going to fit together to get me to my dream? So look at your chart and see where Virgo is. You're going to look at the house and then look at what you have in Pisces. Pisces is what your dream is. What was Creator dreaming up? when you were created? You answer that by looking at Pisces. And of course, the answer is not going to be cut and dry because that's the nature of Pisces. That's the nature of a dream. Okay. And then what axis is that? Is it the 5th and the 11th? Is it the 6th and the 12th? Look at that whole axis. Wholeness is the name of the game for Virgo season. It really is for every season, but for some reason, I don't usually talk about things like a whole, we usually are like, look at Virgo, what house is Virgo in? But for this season, for Virgo season, let's really get our minds attuned to the whole axis. Look at what house Virgo is in. Virgo season is going to be emphasizing that particular house for you. So if it is in the 6th house, Virgo, that means that you would have Aries rising. Virgo would be in your 6th house. And that would say that during Virgo season, ultimate priority is definitely your health and wellness. Definitely whatever it is that you're doing as a volunteer or what you're doing as your service to humanity, your work as not as a servant, not as servitude, but as your commitment to serving spirit. Through that service, you also a need that you have for wholeness. Look at what other planets that you might have in that particular house, because as the sun moves through Virgo in that particular house for you, it will activate whatever planets you have there. So just take a look at that and see, and feel free to ask any questions. We're going to be closing here in about 3 minutes. So if you have any specific questions, you want me to say a few words about you have Virgo in such and such house with such and such planet, I will be happy to do 1 or 2 of those if you guys want. It feels like the start of the year for me because ascendant is in Virgo. 1 and 7th is the relationship axis, also with Saturn. Wow, that's a really cool notice. I can see that. That's cool. I had never thought about that. So for I just have to say this out loud to run it through my mind to see how that fits. So when it's Taurus season, that would be like the sun going over my ascendant. That could be like a fresh start. I could see that. Another way when I run it through mine like that, and I'm like, okay, sun going through there, it's like also like, yeah, I can see that. It's like, how are you now? What is no, okay. So sun, your ascendant is in Virgo. Sun is passing through there, reviving, refreshing, illuminating that part of you. Like, all right, how are you, the priestess of this thing? What is how awakening the inner priestess? Actually, when I was in priestess initiation, I did 2.5 years at this priestess training. It wasn't in person. It was online, but like this through these videos and stuff. 2.5 years, but and then it was like a 9-month thing. It always started when the sun went into Virgo. So it was like awakening the priestess. So if you have Virgo rising, that's what it seems like to me. It's like awakening that part of you that has a commitment to service, pulling all the pieces together, bringing all bringing all of the parts together to somehow create a service. And when the sun is going through there, it's doing that for all of us. But for you, it's like your life purpose, your life intention, the way that you are ascending. First and seventh, relationship axis. Okay, so yeah, so through relationship, wow, gosh, that's so crazy how that ascendant is always part of the relationship axis. So for us to ascend, we can never get out of relationship. If we're going to ascend, relationship is a part of that. Um, and I feel like, okay, again, to Marshmallow's point, there is, I'm seeing this. It's weird because for me, I have Saturn also in Virgo, and the thing that makes Saturn's like get up, do the thing, it drives the point. And so I'm oftentimes like, it's hard for me to separate those because it's something that I'm so identified with on my own personal chart that I'm like, is that part of Saturn? I mean, the like get it done. I think you know what would separate it is that the Saturn contracts, brings it down, it makes a contract out of it. It's like it's a heavy force that you feel it weighing down on you. Whereas Virgo is the part that is able to use the hands to go do the thing and to digest the bits of information and to what's the word? I used to say this in the Navy, delegate. You're delegating not only to different parts of yourself, different times of the day. This is like a schedule where you delegate tasks to different parts of the day, to different people. Hey, you go get the water. I want you to sweep the floor. I want you to make sure this happens at this time. So there's a delegation factor with Virgo that Saturn doesn't really have. Saturn just is like lays the law. And then Virgo is like, all right, this is the energy that you have to go get these things done. Keep your body healthy so you don't have to have a sick day and so that nobody's carrying your weight for you. Keep your body healthy so that you carry your own weight. Those are kind of Virgo things, but Saturn is the weight. All right. My Virgo is Sun, Mercury. Wait a second. My Virgo. Okay, so next time I need somebody to come organize my life, Marshmallow, please tell me your real name and your email address so I can contact you because you have. It's like you were the moment you were born, there was a huge signature of Virgo. Virgo is Sun, Mercury, midheaven, Pallas Athena, all in the ninth house, and Jupiter in the third. So you've got Jupiter in Pisces. So, and I don't know, I haven't seen your chart. Maybe I have seen your chart, but Jupiter in Pisces being that direct opposition, Jupiter is going to expand. It's going to make a big deal out of whatever it is touching. So for you in opposition, touching that ninth house, you have a lot of Virgo. And so you have Mercury there too, which would, it might make it hard too for you to discern between like the Mercury Virgo piece that I was talking about earlier. It's kind of crazy. No, it's kind of awesome for Virgo season. Okay, so let's talk about Virgo season. So since you've got all of this in Virgo, when we get to Virgo season, I just will see the sun illuminating all these different parts, making you allowing, it's not making you, an encouraging and allowing you to be the best possible Virgo that you can be, the best possible Virgo. Born on a Saturn day. You were born on Saturn's day. Okay. All right. So I think that's enough for today. We're just a little over an hour now. So my goal is to do an hour. We had a lot of channels. I think this is like the fifth one in like a 7-day period. So I'm really enjoying this. And since it's Virgo season, oh, wow, Virgo does seem quite Saturnian, right? Saturnian, now that you mention it. Yeah, I feel that too. It's kind of hard to decipher though. And let's sit on this and think about it more because there is that quality that with Virgo, when I just said think about it more, that I hear Mercury, and I feel also the Virgo likes that it's analyzing, it is analytical. So there is that Mercury piece in there. Thank you. I love you. I miss you so much. And I can't wait to get together with you again and talk in person or on a video. Okay, so thank you all so much. And I look forward to connecting with you soon.